Hey, this is Tom from MVP Chess, and welcome back to my series on Bobby Fischer's seminal work, My 60 Memorable Games. In this video, we'll be analyzing game number 19 that Fischer played versus Gudmundsson in Reykjavik 1960. You're not going to want to miss this tactical melee in the Grünfeld Defense. Before we jump into the analysis, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and join Team MVP. Thanks so much for your support. Okay, so Fischer with the black pieces. We have d4, knight f6, knight f3, and d5. So it would have been interesting to see what Fischer would have played had Gudmundsson played 3c4 in this position. Perhaps he would have played e6 and gone for a queen's gambit declined, which Fischer did employ occasionally throughout his career. But instead, Gudmundsson goes for the more passive e3. So Fischer adopts his tried and true kingside fianchetto setup against the queen's pawn opening. c4, bishop g7, knight c3, castle. So we've transposed into a variation of the Grünfeld defense. The Grünfeld was something that Fischer also liked to play throughout his career. You may be aware that Fischer's game of the century versus Byrne featured this opening. That was a Grünfeld defense. After queen b3, Gudmundsson develops the queen and looks to apply maximum pressure to Fischer's center, which he reinforces with pawn to e6. And after bishop e2, usually in the Grünfeld defense and in many of Black's main openings, such as the queen's gambit declined, the pawn advance c5 is a really thematic critical move to make. Okay, but instead, Fischer plays knight c6 here, voluntarily blocking in this pawn. However, he has a concrete idea in this position. He would like to play knight a5 and look to win this light squared bishop. Okay, winning the bishop pair would definitely be a nice positional edge. Gudmundsson here could consider taking on d5, but Fischer notes that after e takes d5, this exchange solves the problem of his light squared bishop. Notice it has a nice diagonal on which to develop, and Fischer can also make use of the half-open e-file, and it would actually be white in this position that would be fighting for equality. So instead, after knight c6, Gudmundsson plays queen to c2, logical move, just stepping out of the way of knight a5. Fischer captures, and after b takes c4, the one way that you justify this knight on c6, blocking in the c-pawn, is to get in the advance e5. You know, that's something you see in the Chigorin defense, for instance, if you're familiar with that opening. So Fischer, of course, understood this and played e5 in this position. Nice move. Okay, looking to strike back in the center. Gudmundsson captures, and the knight jumps to g4. Notice Fischer is attacking this pawn 3 times and will win it back. Gudmundsson decides to castle in this position. Okay, hard to criticize this move, prioritizing your king safety, especially against a player of Fischer's caliber. But he actually had a nice desperado in this position. And the desperado is a nice tactical motive to be aware of. If you're going to lose a pawn or if you're going to lose a piece, you may as well do it on your own terms and try to inflict some sort of weakness in your opponent's position. So Gudmundsson could have done that by playing pawn to e6 here, with the point being that after bishop takes, pawn takes, castles, Fischer's pawn structure is worse. He's got 3 pawn islands and an isolated pawn on e6 that Gudmundsson could look to attack in the long term. Fischer's totally fine. This position is equal, but that would have given Gudmundsson a little something to target. Instead, after castles, knight takes, Gudmundsson drops the bishop back to e2. Good move, preserving this bishop. Fischer plays c6 and has equalized the position. And here Gudmundsson plays f4. Very logical move. So why did Gudmundsson play this move? Well, if we look at the respective pawn majorities, white has a 4v3 pawn majority on the king side. Fischer has a 3v2 pawn majority on the queen side. So both players are going to look to advance those in the near to long term. The nice thing about f4 is that Gudmundsson initiates his plan and wins a tempo on this knight. So Fischer plays a very provocative move, knight g4. And Gudmundsson immediately challenges this knight with pawn to h3. Undoubtedly expecting Fischer to play knight f6, where after pawn to e4, Gudmundsson has a really ideal center. Notice how these pawns on f4 and e4 are really controlling a lot of key squares in black's position and really pacifying Fischer's pieces. But of course, Fischer was a student of polymorphy. He understood the power of forcing moves. So before he retreated the knight, he looked for a better move. So I'll turn it over to you. Pause your video. What did Fischer play in this position? So congratulations if you noticed that black can win a tempo for his development with bishop to f5. Good move. Attacking the queen. Now, Fischer gives a rather long but forcing variation here, which would have ended in rough equality. He says that this is best for white. Queen b3, knight f6. White can win some pawns on the queen side, but after rook c8, Fischer's piece is nicely coordinated on the c-file. He's going to win back some material here. The bishop can come to a3. We have an exchange here, and then Fischer found in his analysis a nice desperado of his own, bishop d4. Okay, that bishop was a goner, and now he's recouping his lost pawn for it. King h1, and king takes f8. Material is equal. Fischer claims that black is a little bit better here, but admits that white has pretty good drawing chances. That would have been best for Gudmundsson, but he, of course, in this position, played the very natural move, pawn to e4. Continuing with his plan of expanding his kingside pawn majority. And now, not only has he gotten f4 in with gain of time, he's gotten e4 in with gain of time. At least so he thought. Did Fischer miscalculate here? Or did he have a nice reply in mind? I'll turn it back over to you. Pause your videos. What did Fischer play in this position? Of course, anytime you advance a pawn, it does leave a weakness in its wake. And here, it's all about these weakened dark squares in black's position. Excuse me, white's position. So congratulations if you found the nice move, queen d4 check. Boom, great move by Fischer. After king h1, white is forced to part with the rook, but does get the bishop pair in return. So, interesting material imbalance on the board. Generally speaking, the two bishops really outshine the rook, especially in an endgame. That can be a decisive material advantage. So, Fischer definitely appreciated that. He noticed his advantage, which he still has, is dynamic in nature. He really needs to act quickly. If anyone has a static advantage, it's actually Gudmundsson in the form of this material advantage, the two bishops versus the rook. So Fischer starts by playing bishop takes c3. Okay, Gudmundsson would love to play queen takes c3 here. Unfortunately, he can't because the bishop on e2 would hang. So b takes c3 is forced. Now, watch how quickly Fischer's pieces infiltrate the position. This is really instructive. Rook e8, gaining time on the bishop. Rook e1, checking the king. Queen g1, flushing the king out from its castle position, and then rook fe8. So Fischer really mobilizes and coordinates his forces very, very quickly. So white's got two concrete problems in this position. The first is this king on g3 that's just floundering around in the center of the board. Okay, so king safety is definitely a problem for white in this position. The second issue that Gudmundsson has is how to develop this dark squared bishop. Okay, he has a material advantage technically, but it's hard to flaunt it when you can't get the pieces in the game. Notice that this bishop on c1 is pinned because the rook on a1 would hang. So Gudmundsson, to solve this problem, played a very logical move, rook b1. Okay, targeting this pawn on b7 and also preparing the dark squared bishop to develop. Notice the rook on b1 is now defended twice by the queen and the bishop. However, this was a mistake. So, I will turn it back over to you. Black to play in this position. What did Fischer play to keep his initiative? So, of course, the main imbalance in this position is the relative safety of the kings. Okay, we want to start creating open lines, open files to attack this really vulnerable king on g3. So congratulations if you found the game continuation, g takes f5, best move. With the idea of either ducking the king into the corner, king h8 followed by rook g8, or rook e6 to rook g6 or rook lift. Either way, it's all about opening the g file and getting more pieces into the attack. It has little to do with winning this pawn on f5. So congratulations if you found that continuation. But it looks as though after bishop d2 that white has solved all of his problems. Okay, he's gaining time on the rook. The rook can't retreat on the e file, otherwise the queen would hang. So what did Fischer do in this position? Pause your videos and try to find Fischer's winning line. So Fischer had great tactical awareness by playing rook takes b1. Congratulations if you found that. Now, I had just mentioned before how, generally speaking, the two bishops outshine the rook in an endgame, and that's absolutely true. So it looks as if positionally that Fischer made a dubious decision. Why would he transpose into this endgame, or liquidate, I should say, into this endgame? But of course, he had a really great follow-up in mind. So I'll give you one last chance to find Fischer's winning line. Pause your videos. How did Fischer bring home the bacon in this position? So there's only one winning move here. Okay, if Fischer didn't see this position and calculate this line, it would have been a huge mistake liquidating into this endgame because of the power of the two bishops. But it's all about, oddly enough, this c-pawn. Okay, way back when Fischer played bishop takes c3 and inflicted that damage in white's pawn structure, it's this c-pawn that's really ruining white's position, because after rook e2, boom, white resigned. The game is over. Notice this bishop is really hemmed in, okay? It only has 3 squares to retreat to. Okay, would love to be able to come perhaps to the b4 square, but it can't. It's blocked in by this pawn. So the only safe square that it has is c1. And Fischer spotted that in this position, rook e1 will win one of the bishops. So after, for example, bishop takes f5, rook takes c1, Fischer is completely winning. Okay, he's not only up the exchange, but he's going to win the c-pawn in short order, and will easily convert this position with a 3v1 queenside pawn majority. So, wow. Nice game by Fischer. We'll put rook e2 on the board. This was the final position. So his opponent was clearly playing very solidly. You know, he had a solid but passive setup, clearly fighting for a draw. And I really thought it was instructive how Fischer, with playing knight g4, with playing bishop f5, managed to provoke Gudmundsson to weaken his position. Okay, Gudmundsson, if he were more tactically aware, had some opportunities, like after queen b3, right, instead of pushing e4, to steer the game towards a draw. But Fischer really managed to provoke him into weakening his position. Got the superior position where even though Gudmundsson had a slight material advantage, Fischer had great activity, perfectly coordinated pieces, and a weak king to attack, and managed to convert flawlessly. So I hope you enjoyed the analysis of game number 19. Don't forget, smash that subscribe button, join Team MVP, hit that bell for notifications. You're not going to want to miss my next installment, which is game number 20. We're in the 20s. All right. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.